There we go. Hey, everybody. We're so happy to have you join us for yet another one of our incredible LinkedIn Lives. I'm Rebecca Minkoff, co-founder of the Female Founder Collective and 10th House and designer. We're really excited today to be having a chat with Alison Wyatt, my co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective, and Marguerite Pressley Davis. She has created an incredible program to create a financial plan to guide your business through 2022. So I don't know if your 2022 is off to a rocky start. Mine is. And so having Marguerite's incredible information, how to seamlessly integrate her planning and systems into your company is so valuable. This is a gold worthy interview we're about to do. And so just a quick recap, if you've never heard of us, the Female Founder Collective in 10th House is a community of female-founded companies. We are here to support, unite, educate you on all the things you didn't know you needed to know to be a founder. We have incredible community of women that are also there to support you. So if you want to check it out, I would encourage you to head over to the Female Founder Collective and join one of our wonderful membership opportunities at the 10th House. And just before we get started, Marguerite has an extensive background. She is partnered with us for our financial planning needs. She is the CEO of Finance Savvy, and we're really proud that JP Morgan Chase is helping us, the Female Founder Collective, bring your profit playbook to life. It's a 6-week course, and it offers a pathway to building your financial confidence, acumen, and know-how, and ultimately a financial plan for your business. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Marguerite. Welcome, and Allie to take it away.
Thanks, Rebecca. So happy to be here. I think it's, such a perfect time to be having this conversation around financial planning because, like Rebecca said, if you're anything like a majority of these small businesses owners out here, 2021 could have been a bit rocky. And so 2022, you're probably tiptoeing into it with a lot of apprehension.
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up on what Rebecca was saying and just note that we are using you as our CFO, and it's been extraordinarily helpful. And Rebecca and I, before you, were sort of sitting down and saying, what does this business look like? What are the opportunities? What are going to be the challenges? Where do we need to be from a cash perspective? And I know that Rebecca was incredibly excited to sit down with you because you really sort of took the financial plan process and made it very approachable, super easy to understand. And I feel like for the first time felt in layman's terms for both of us. And I don't have a finance background. Rebecca does not have a finance background, but you really sort of teach people how to put themselves in command of their business, which is extraordinary. And I can't think of a more relevant thing to be doing at the top of the year than this. So thank you for being here. And without further ado, I want to jump into questions because what I just mentioned, the financial plan process, right? Like, what are the components of a financial plan, Marguerite? And can you help us sort of define what each piece is? Because I think at the end of the day, while we might hear balance sheet and income statement, the reality is a lot of us actually don't know what they are and what they mean. And even if we do know what they are, how it applies to our business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love what you said too, Allie, when you mentioned like you don't come from a financial background, but you have run multiple successful companies, and ultimately being able to think about finance and financial planning from this CEO viewpoint is what's so important. And it's like, if I could have one big takeaway, it's like you do not have to be a finance person to be able to dive into financial planning. It's something that as that CEO, you really want to take ownership of and be working, with you and your teammates to really guide some of that. So with that being said, financial planning can seem like this really scary world of like deep finances. So let me explain it in such a way where one, it becomes relevant for you as a CEO, but two, that it's like demystifying all of the scary words like P&L, balance sheet, the whole nine. So the way that I want you to think about your financial plan is think of this as it's literally your roadmap. your Siri that's guiding you through month by month on what you can be expecting to make revenue-wise in your business. And then what it will take you from an expense perspective, what you need to spend to make those revenues a reality. And then also telling you, well, how much are you going to have left? How profitable are you? It's going to answer questions for you like, where do I stand from cash? Am I going to run out of cash? And if I am going to run out of cash, how am I going to fix it? It's going to explain things like things you may need to dial back on from a spend perspective, or more aggressive goals that you need to set from a revenue perspective. And what that boils down to is for you to really have a comprehensive financial plan for your business. What I want you to think of is I want you to have that one revenue plan. How am I going to make money in my business? What am I going to be selling? How am I going to be pricing these products and services? I want you to have a really clear spending plan. All right, now that I know how I'm going to make money, again, what do I need to spend to make it happen? I also want you to have a profit plan. What's that profit plan? How much am I going to have left again after everything I've made and I take out everything I have left? So that's the third component, the profit plan. The fourth component that I want you to have is I want you to have your cash map. And if you've ever heard me coach before, one of the things I really, really harp on is cash is queen. Profits are great, but I want you to know and be asking the questions as the CEO, how am I doing on cash? How long is this cash going to last me? And that's what the cash map is going to do. And then the fifth component to the financial plan, and the fifth and last, is I want you to focus on having a key performance indicator dashboard. So let me break that down. All this means is that as that CEO, I want you to know at any given time, what is it that is driving the direction of your company, right? What are some of those levers or triggers that are going to drive your success or non-success? Yeah, we're really familiar with some things like margins, but for every business, these key metrics you're looking at are going to be a bit different depending on the type of business you have. So again, forget about all of the fancy accounting finance words. Ultimately, what I've just described to you there, that's the financial plan that you want to make sure that you have going into 2022.
And Marguerite, as we talk about benchmarks, I think that's one of the most important things that, you've worked with us to define and creating that dashboard. What are some example benchmarks, first of all? How do you, and when I say benchmarks, I mean your key performance indicators in this instance, how many KPIs should you select for your business, and so that it's not too many that you're having to track? And how do you limit it down? How do you know which KPIs are the ones that I should be looking at most closely?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this question too, because you guys, just a little background here. Allie and I, when we have our CFO sessions together monthly, it's one of the things that Allie is so keen on, you guys. She's always thinking about the goals and how do those goals that are in the financial plan, how does it relate to what her team needs to be carrying out? And I share that tidbit with you because that's how I want you to think about your benchmarks or your KPIs, right? Simplistically think about it as what are the goals that I need to be setting for my team and then tracking on that monthly basis. So the way that I like to think about KPIs, broadly speaking, think about what are those benchmarks from a revenue perspective that are going to ensure that you're hitting your revenue goals, right? So things like, let's say that you're in the business of candle making. A KPI that you're definitely going to have is maybe the number of retail stores that you're in. So think of it this way. If you have a benchmark that you've set that you need to be in 5 retail stores to hit your goal, well, guess what? You're tracking. How are you going with that 5? Are you only at 2 at one point in the month? Are you at 3? So that for you would be an example of like a revenue benchmark, okay? But just the same as it relates to revenue, you're going to have benchmarks. Maybe you have a retail store, and it is how much foot traffic you're actually getting into your store. Because why do you need foot traffic? Because foot traffic is going to convert in sales. So I use those examples to really illustrate how I want you to start thinking about the benchmarks that are specific for your business. So from a revenue perspective, what's going to be driving my revenue? Now, let's talk about the expense side on benchmarks, because ultimately there are some expense benchmarks that no matter what business you're in, I always want you to keep top of mind. I want at any given point for you to be able to know what are your gross margins and what are your net margins, okay? So not to go too technical on you, but I have to explain what these two mean, because if you take nothing away, I want you to know these two. So your gross margins are going to tell you how much money you have left after directly spending all of the expenses to deliver that product or service. How much money do you have left to operate the rest of your business? Okay. The reason that I want you to focus on this one so much is because too often, especially with small business owners, they're spending so much just to deliver their product or service that they're starving their business of the ability to do things like marketing and run a team, right? So that's why it's really critical that at any given point, you also know, have a pulse on where your expenses coming from. And then on the other side, again, I told you the most other important one is your net margins. From every dollar that you make, how much of it do you have left to be able to grow and scale? Okay. So remember, gross margins is different because that's after the direct sale, how much you have left to run the rest of your business. But net is after all of the expenses come out of your business, how much do you have left to do things like reinvest, right? Because we have to reinvest so we can grow our businesses and scale them. Pay things like bonuses, right? So those are examples of, I always want you to think of benchmarks in terms of what are drivers towards my revenue, what are benchmarks or drivers of my expenses. And then the third bucket I want you to keep a keen eye on, because we need to, again, grow and scale. What do you need to keep an eye on to ensure that you're continuing to grow? A great example of this is, let's say, your email list, right? Is your email list growing? Because if you notice that your email list isn't growing and that's your primary platform that you sell your products, guess what? If that's not growing, you may start to see, is the business in decline? Is the market in decline? What's the issue there?
And then Marguerite, you talked about the dashboard, and that's something that you actually create in the Your Profit Playbook program. When thinking sort of about how you're tracking these things, how often, something that I've seen in the past is that maybe you set goals, but you're not actually looking at it often enough to realize that, oh, wow, I'm in a totally different direction. There's no way I'm going to hit these goals. So how often do you track these things, and what sort of a process that you recommend that these CEOs implement in order to ensure that they stay on track?
Absolutely. So I say to track these metrics, track these goals, use your KPI dashboard weekly. Why do I say weekly? Because think about it this way. If you're not tracking it frequently, it takes longer for you to realize something is wrong, and therefore your window to course correct is a bit smaller. Now, if you're just starting off and you've never kind of, what I call, these are money dates. If you've never had these money dates with yourself on a weekly basis, please at least try to start doing them on a monthly basis, okay? Because I get it. It can feel overwhelming saying, Marguerite, I've never done this before, and now you want me to do it weekly. I do want you to do it weekly, because the more you're looking at something, the more that you're able to see what's wrong and you can course correct. One of the things that I love, Allie, that we do inside of Your Profit Playbook is, and it's, thanks to you guys' partnership, Allie, with JP Morgan Chase, is that we're able to do these weekly private group sessions on top of them actually going through the Your Profit Playbook program. And so these weekly sessions, they're that presents the opportunity to ask questions, to kind of say, hey, here's what I'm seeing when I'm building out this portion of my financial plan. Can you give me guidance on this insight? And so what we're doing weekly is those money dates, right? It's you are checking in with that financial person who is either A, guiding you, or A, it could just be a member of your team. And you're saying, hey guys, Friday's our day. Thursday's our day, whenever, that we're going to sit down. We're going to look at how we did on our financials compared to what the plan says. So in short, Allie, I want you to do it weekly. However, if that feels way too daunting, start at least with those monthly money dates.
And thinking back to those benchmarks, Marguerite, you mentioned if you have somebody that perhaps has never done this before, maybe the reason why they've never done this is because they didn't have a business as of, 2 months ago. So if you're just launching your business, which a lot of our 10,000 members are in that position,
Yeah.
how can you accurately predict or project these numbers? What is your process look for helping people like that don't have any historicals to really go off of or analyze in order to create an accurate projection?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is and I get this question a lot. And here's why I think that even if you have never, like, your business is just starting from scratch, why I say that you're in a really good position is because you have the ability to get things right from the start, right? Sometimes what I hear is people who are just starting, they'll delay and say, I'm just going to wait to see how things go. Well, you got to start somewhere with setting the goals, because what I have found 10 times out of 10 is it's really hard to reach something that you haven't set, right? So even if you don't have your historicals to rely on, think of your day zero as right now. And what I coach inside of Your Profit Playbook, and what I love about it, is my method of finance is always coming from a place of intrinsic from your company, right? So there's a lot of things, and here's what I mean by intrinsic about your company, is one of the scary things when you're just starting up is you may try to compare or set your projections based on other companies, or, what is your business besties company going? But the scary part about that for a startup is you're going to be figuring out a lot of things in that year one and year two. So what I encourage in the way that I coach in the methodologies inside Your Profit Playbook is think about things from an intrinsic perspective. What are you capable of doing this year? What are the constraints that you are working around, right? What is your team size? What are you able to do with that? And use that as a starting projection for your first year out, versus looking at, I see they did X. Well, also, did you realize they've been in business for 5 years, right? So that's why I think it's actually very good for a startup who's never been in business before, Your Profit Playbook, because we don't do a lot of the looking and seeing what the competitors are doing. No, we're basing it off of what are the capabilities that your business has at the stage. And I'll give you a perfect example to illustrate this point. Let's say that your business is very inventory heavy, and what you can sell to the retailers, it's based on what you can produce. Okay. So let's say that you are basing your new business, basing your projections on a company maybe that has been in business for a few years, and they're able to do 100 widgets a month. Okay. And you say, Marguerite, I wanted my projections to do 100 widgets a month. Well, what I'm going to say to you is, but you don't have a warehouse just yet, right? You're operating it out of a storage building. What is the capacity of what you can produce in that storage building? How big is your team? They have 10 over there. Are you able to hire 10 people right now? No. So how do we dial that down and make it relevant for you and your business?
And Marguerite, I want to talk about cash, because totally agree with the fact that cash is queen. And then I want to get into, what if you're a business that's going out and looking to raise venture capital, right? And how do you have your financials buttoned up for that reason? Because a lot of our founders, that's where they are, right? And they need to appear in command and be in command of their financials at the least to get these great investors on board. But as it pertains to cash, you said cash is queen. Is there a marker by which, or sort of a recommendation on, here's the type of runway that you need to have for your business if you're not yet profitable? And is there a point in time when you think most founders should be profitable? Like, are there some hard and fast rules that founders can think about as it pertains to how much cash they should have on hand for their business?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer this in two different ways. The first one is I'm going to agree 1,000% of how critical it is for you coming in as that founder, raising capital. And owning that conversation around finances, owning the conversation around the cash in your business. I previously worked with a $25 million venture fund, helping founders to do just that, get ready to raise capital. And one of the things that I can tell you is that you will lose the interest of investor really quickly. And Allie, you do angel investing, so you know this too, is when you get down to the numbers and it's like, I don't know, or the blank stare, right? So this is something as a founder that you can actively, own, knowing that they're interested in the finances, investing the time to get up to speed with them. Now, a hard, fast benchmark that I use and that I coach on is you want about 6 months of operating expenses in runway. Now, here's the reality, Allie, is that it's really hard sometimes for a startup to get to that 6 months of runway. But one of the things that I always coach on is ultimately, even if you are not at that 6 months of cash runway just yet, what can you do? What is the plan that will get you there, right? So if you don't, I still want you to be able to communicate, okay, well, this is the plan to get to that 6 months of runway. Here's what I'm going to actively be doing month after month. Now, around the second part of your question around profitability, here's 2 things that I think that I found that founders can get a little bit confused about. Profitability is very different than cash, okay? So as a founder, I want to make sure that although it may take you a couple of years, 24 months sometimes, even 36, to actually be profitable, what I want you to be more worried about is making sure that you don't run out of cash during that time frame. So I'm okay. It's not scary to see it a couple years to get you profitable. Why? Because in the early stages of your business, you're investing a lot in far as people, marketing, brand awareness, so that you can get to that point of stability, right? Where you are eventually profitable. But again, while I'm okay with you not being profitable, don't run out of cash. And that's where the cash map comes into play, which is why that, Allie, you heard me say a million times, but that's where the cash is queen's part, and why I harp on the cash mapping part inside of your profit playbook so much.
So Marguerite, just going back to raising venture capital, can you speak a little bit to what sort of financials, basically their financial model, what does that need to look like in preparation for meeting with an investor, whether it's at a seed stage all the way to a Series A? I think if you're going into Series A, you probably have a CFO in-house that is helping you with these things. But can you speak a little bit to the materials that you should need, but also how benchmarks might differ, right? Because a lot of startups, as you were talking about, they don't necessarily strive to be profitable, right? Because they're constantly reinvesting in their business, but they do want to have that cash at least up until the next raise. So can you speak a little bit to those numbers and benchmarks?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So what I want you to have is exactly everything that I just laid out for you in the financial plan part, those 5 components, right? Now, there's levels. And when I say if you have all those components, you're like at a gold star standard, okay? Because if you hear a lot of investors talk, one of the things that is scary, again, reinforcing it, is not having those, that financial plan that you're ready to show. So if you have those 5 components that I talked about earlier, again, you're gold standard. Now, one of the things that will vary from investor to investor is how far out in projections they want to see, okay? One thing is that for a startup, I always, on average, you're going to be asked for about 36-month viewpoint out, right? But one of the things that I always say, even if it's the 36 months or 12 months out of those projections of revenue, spend, profit, the whole 9, what I want you to always know at any point is, before you even think about 3 years out, get confident with 1 year, okay? Because if you're not confident with what year 1 looks like, you're making it harder on yourself to even see what year 3 looks like. Now, back in the day, like Yep, exactly. Back in my Goldman Sachs days when, half of the day was spent like reading investment committee memos, like, why are we investing in this? There used to be like 10-year projections that we were looking at, right? But in this type of environment, what I have seen over the past few years is it's really the steering away from seeing like that far out 10-year for a startup. Now, there's some cases where it's going to be really relevant for the 10 years, but don't stress yourself out about that right now. Okay. So with those benchmarks, this is where that KPI dashboard comes into play that I talked about. This is what I want you to wow your investors with. Wow them with showing them that what are those metrics that you're focused on, right? Like if you're in a membership or subscription business, I want you to be talking to them about things like churn, okay? I want you to be talking to them about things like, okay, where are the major points in time where you're investing in more marketing, and so you have a steep growth rate, all right? Now, the KPI dashboard, think of this is not something new that's being created out of thin air. Your KPI dashboard is directly coming from your financial plan. Okay. Now, one of the things that I will also say, and I'm going to position this more as a pitfall because sometimes knowing the pitfalls helps you to avoid it. One of the major pitfalls that I see when people are trying to get investors is they're asking for a certain level of cash or a certain amount of cash, but it doesn't tie at all to what they have in their financial plan, right? Meaning, let's say you're raising 1 million for me and you tell me you need 1 million to get you through the next 12 months. But then when I look in your financial plan, I only see about 30,000 in expenses. It's like, okay, there's a disconnect there. So when you are building your financial plan and especially preparing for investors, be prepared to answer the question, how much do you need? And when they ask you, how much do you need? I want you to be so on point that you can go right to that cash plan that you built or you built with your profit playbook, and you go there and you can justify the amount of cash that you need. And it ties directly to what you are projecting in your business.
Super helpful. And it's true. Or you'll go in and look as an investor. I've seen this where you look at their plan and they actually need double that to get to the 12-month marker. And so you're sort of saying, well, your plan actually shows something very different than what you're asking for. So the other thing, that I would love to hear from you, Marguerite, is some of the common mistakes that you see founders or CEOs make as they are putting together a financial plan for their business or sort of steering the finances of their company.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to say there's two major mistakes I see. The first major mistake that I see is not starting with the end in mind. And here's what I mean by that. They build their financial plan without first getting really clear with themselves or their business partner on what they want the business to be, right? Because think about it, you're planning now, but you're planning for the future. So they start building the financial plan, not keeping in mind, like, what do I see for this business? How big do I want it to be? Am I trying to sell it? Or is this a long-term business for me that I want to give to my kids? And the reason that is so critical, Allie, is because the decisions that you will make are for the long term. So if you don't know what the long term means for you, you may be taking different actions. For example, if you know that at the end of the 12 months, you want a capital raise. So if you know you want to raise capital, what is one thing that the investors want to see? They want to see that you have some great traction. So because you know that you want to get investors, so you want to build up traction, you may be doing aggressive marketing tactics. So you may be investing, putting more on your financial plan towards marketing spend. But now let's say it's different. Let's say that you tell me that your end goal is like, I just want it to replace my corporate salary, right? I don't want to get in debt. I don't want investors. So guess what? Your financial plan is going to be a lot more conservative. We're going to make sure that you're conserving cash. We're going to make sure that you're not taking really risky moves. We're going to ensure that you can get that annual salary out of it, versus if we're capital raising, maybe you're okay with going 12, 24 months with no salary. So that's the number one mistake that I see, is not spending the time to digest what you want for your business before you start building your plan. The second thing that I will say is the biggest mistake is they build the plan based on what their business bestie's plan looks like, or they build it based on the dream company that they want it to be. They don't spend time as that founder, as that CEO, really putting in the work in to say, what's realistic for my business? What's relevant for me? You know, it's easy to go download a template off the internet and say, okay, this is, I'm going to plug and chug. But have you put the thought into how this is specific for your business? What matters? Are you thinking about pricing? Are you thinking about the team that you need, right? And then I'll actually tack on a third one. I'll say the third biggest thing that I've seen with financial planning is you say, I'm just going to get someone to do it for me. Leave it alone. Please hand it off to me when it's done. Thank you. Well, what happens in that scenario, Allie, is it does become that encyclopedia on the shelf that gets dusty that you don't use, right? Financial planning should really be this thing that you are actively involved in, that you are putting in the work to create it, because it's more meaningful of how you're going to give direction to your company, how your team is going to have confidence in you, the confidence that you're going to show up with as the owner, because you know the impacts of your decisions. You're making strong decisions because you know in the back of your mind, you understand the tie of that action to maybe your cash balance.
So helpful. And it's so true. I think one of the first things that I actually had a mentor sit down and say and tell me is the number one thing you need to do when you're starting a business is determine what you want out of it, right? What is your goal? Do you want this to be a small business? Do you want this to be a venture-backed unicorn? Do you want to sell? And if you do want to sell, how many years? Because all of your efforts, it becomes so much easier to make decisions, which I think is really helpful. And certainly everything that you've provided to us, it gives you so much comfort, I think, as a business owner, as a CEO, to know I'm not going to run out of cash. And if I am going to run out of cash, I'm looking, it might be in 6 months I run out of cash, but I know that I need to take these actions and then I won't. And so there's a lot more foresight into something that feels otherwise uncontrollable. It actually is very controllable if you take these steps. So we appreciate that. And in closing, I wanted to hear how you think people can set themselves up for success, founders, as they're, what they should be doing going into 22. And in addition to that, just give us a quick summary on what people would ultimately come away with your profit playbook, which I think is literally the most invaluable tool that any founder can have. So that's why we've partnered with Marguerite on this, is that it's just people don't put enough emphasis on this area.
Yeah, absolutely. So the takeaway for any founder is, one, get really clear on what you want for your business in 2022. It is okay if what you want now was different than what you wanted in 2021. Don't feel like just because you were on one track, you have to stay there, right? Yeah. Make sure that you're clear on what you want, what you see for it, right? Like tonight, we are doing the financial goal setting party, which I'm so excited about. And that's what we're spending a lot of time on tonight, is just getting really clear on the goals we're going to set and our vision for it. Because the second takeaway that I want you to have is, once you get really clear on that, is being really, I'll say, encourage yourself that even though maybe finances or money hasn't been your strong suit in the past, or you don't consider it to even currently be a strong suit, that is okay. Go in with the confidence of knowing that building a financial plan is manageable, but don't avoid it just because you say that it's not your strong suit. And to go to the third part is, and that's where your profit playbook really does, I think, come into play, Allie, is being in the finance industry for a long time now, it is really important to me that CEOs understand and founders, they process finance in a way that's relevant for them to run the business. Like, we're not here to, turn you into a finance guru and you're going to, go run the finance department. No, it's about how you think and approach finance and financial planning in such a way that it makes you that stronger, more confident CEO. One of the things that I love about your Profit Playbook and the ability to do this cohort really with you, Allie, Females Founder Collective, is that you are having the money conversations. You are building your financial plan. You are charting your path forward with a group of like-minded individuals, right? You are there having the tough conversations, challenging yourself, all while having myself as a CFO guiding you through the process. So you're not doing it alone. So it no longer has to be this scary thing.
I love that. It's so true. I mean, you're preaching to the choir about the necessity of having people along on what is an extraordinarily hard journey as a founder, but there's nothing more relevant than having somebody along on that journey and like getting to actually sit down with other people going through the same process alongside also a CFO. Like you're sort of doubling down on that community aspect. So I love it. But everybody, you have, I think it's the last day for people to be able to sign up. So everybody hurry up and come join us for your Profit Playbook. Again, there's not enough money in the world that would make this too much money for you to spend against your business. So we have until 1/9. So hurry up, only a few more days, but absolutely everybody, this is a very unique opportunity. It's a really wonderful opportunity. We've taken advantage of it, and so much that we went out, and after seeing Marguerite host a session, I came to her and I was like, would you please be our CFO? Because I absolutely need you to hold my hand in this process of building out our financial plan and making sure that we're stable and continue to survive and thrive. So we want that for all of you. Definitely join us. Thank you so much, Marguerite, for doing this, for providing this opportunity. And thank you all for being here today.
Thank you, Allie. And as I always say, you and Rebecca are rock stars. So it is such a pleasure to be able to support you on your financial journey too.
Awesome. Well, we're very grateful indeed. Happy 2022, everyone. Kicking it off in the right gear.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye, Allie.